What's going on, everyone? Taylor, Kyles, and Mike Kadlick here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. We got another mailbag for you, folks. It's Monday. You know the drill. And today, joining us, we have somebody making their debut on the show, Chris Mason of MassLive. Dude, we are so excited to have you on, answering the good people's questions. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, how you doing, brother? Welcome to the show.
Dude, great. Pumped to be here. Pumped to have a mailbag episode too. Go back and forth with the people. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it as well, man. Also, very nice background. Looks very classy. Looking like a mature adult when I got my Funkos and everything, but it looks fantastic. All right. Want to let everybody know in this show, we are trying to help raise money for Chris's cousin, Emily, who is unfortunately going through colon cancer. As we all know, don't need any reminders, cancer absolutely sucks. But if you can find it in your heart and if you can afford it as well, I know times are tough for everybody, but it would really mean a lot. We have the link in the chat, so if you want to donate directly to her GoFundMe, you're more than welcome. But also any donations in the Super Chat will go towards the GoFundMe as well. So again, you're very encouraged to donate however you can, however much you can. It really means a lot. And Chris, I want to give the floor to you before we get into it and tell us a little more about Emily and, the situation.
Yeah, so it's my cousin Emily. She's just 42 years old, was having some stomach issues, went to the hospital to get it checked out. They said it's actually stage 4 cancer. It started to spread. It's brutal. It's, it just kind of takes the words out of your mouth. You just don't wow, how do you even respond to that? It's just, it's a tough situation, but the cancer spread. She's had a few surgeries. She's been in and out of the hospital for like 2 months now, but things are starting to go a little better. She's supposed to start chemo in a couple of weeks. So yeah, like Taylor said, anything helps. Understand that these are tough times, but seriously, anything really, really appreciated.
Yeah, man, we're wishing the absolute best for you and your family. All the love, we really care about you and we hope everything turns out well, obviously. So once again, everybody, the link is in the chat. If you want to donate to the chat, we'll take care of it and donate afterwards. But whatever you can, it's really very much appreciated. Now, we'll get into some questions. Let's have some fun, everybody. All right, first question of the mailbag. With Justin Jefferson getting his contract, biggest contract in history for a non-quarterback, man got paid. Ricky was on it, by the way. If you follow Ricky on Twitter, you want your scoops a little earlier than all the big guys. He's the one to go to. Should the Patriots be in a bigger hurry to get a wide receiver one or rock with who they have? I'm assuming we're talking about like a T. Higgins, a Brandon Ayuk, maybe even a Debo, some of those big-time names that have been flashed around. So, Chris, what do you think? Does this create more urgency, or do you think in Patriots news this isn't really much of a shakeup?
I think it creates more urgency to draft one and get a cross-control guy. But in terms of the trade market or anything, no, I don't think this really changes things for them right now, where personally I don't like trading for Higgins or Ayuk right now, given what it's going to cost. Probably going to be a first rounder for either of those guys if you read enough of the reports. And your first rounder could very well be a top 5 again next year, maybe even higher. So I don't like parting with a first rounder next year. I think if you're going to trade for one of these guys, you should have done it before the draft last year. And I don't see it happening now.
It's pretty fair.
Yeah, I'm with you on the trade market, especially you mentioned too the the first round pick having to go up for sale, right? I mean, you look at even what Mike Reese wrote about it yesterday, sort of the ESPN Football Power Index, and again, that those are numbers and analytics that you don't know what's going to happen this season, but right now they could be in line for the number 1 pick. So if you end up trading that for a guy like T. Higgins or Ayuk, who are great, it's still a little bit that's a little bit too pricey for me. I do think though they you hope they you hope they draft one, because those contracts go and these guys don't hit the open market. That's why these guys get tied up like Jefferson. It's relatively rare that these guys just get traded for nothing. So try and draft one. You hope you hit one on one of these guys early with Baker and Jalen Polk. But even next year, if you have one of those high picks and you're still wide receiver needy, you can use that pick on one of those guys. So it does add urgency in terms of, helping the room, but I don't think they necessarily have to, go spending a ton of capital on one of the guys that are out there now.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page as you guys. I feel like the Pats are actually on track, kind of with what we saw with Joe Burrow, where Burrow gets drafted and then they also take T. Higgins. I think Javon Baker can be that kind of guy where maybe he's, a lower end one if he hits his ceiling, but then the next year, maybe your record's not going to be great, but you'll be in range to get a true number one game changer type. And then you're looking at a pretty stacked wide receiver core, especially because I like Jalen Polk. I like Demario Douglas. I feel like this is a group that could be really good if they're allowed to grow together and really get some chemistry going. But at the same time, yeah, I just don't know how I feel about giving up capital for one of those guys. And the contracts are always going to go up. Like, I think there was a point made earlier today that, you know, you want to pay these guys early. If you do have a star on your hands, don't wait till the end of their contract. And whenever it happens, you're paying a really great deal, because by the time they do reach the end of their contract, the price is just going to keep going up and up. So, yeah, not much of a rush to get necessarily somebody else. Just stick to your module that Elliot Wolf's been preaching, draft, develop, and find that guy, and then make sure that you don't have to give up extra capital and use one of those high.
Or maybe it's David Wallace. Maybe it's David Wallace who they signed today becomes that, you know, that true wide receiver number one for them. Who knows?
Every time I hear David Wallace, I think of The Office. Just like in my head, that is his face. All right. Are there any remaining free agents that you think the Pats need to go and get? Now, we've actually got a little list of some of the positions that the Patriots could probably use a little bit more depth at. Are there any names on this list that jump out to you guys as someone the Patriots need to target? Now, Chris, you can go first.
In terms of need, no, but there are guys on this list that I would want, you know, at the right price. Where I've been banging the Steph Gilmore drum pretty much like all offseason, where I don't think I've ever come across an NFL team that's been like, we have too much cornerback depth. You know, we just have too many guys. Like, that never happens at that position. He's still out there. He said that he'd be willing to come back to New England. I think he could be a great mentor for Christian Gonzalez. You know, just basically take him under his wing, show him how to be a pro, do all the right things, basically how to grow into a Steph Gilmore type player. So he's somebody the whole time that I've thought makes a ton of sense. But I mean, there's also obviously a reason he hasn't signed yet, and that's that the league must not see it the same way.
What do you think?
I mean, I look at the tackles immediately, and I know Bakhtiari is coming off injury and hasn't been healthy for a while, but you know, someone like, depending on the price, Donovan Smith, Charles Leno, like those guys, I think are better options than Chuks Okorafor. And you know, maybe not the whole season, or maybe not, I guess down the line, but I still think that position needs some help. The left tackle and the line in general, like I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on the moves they made across the line. And I think there's some solid veteran help that you could put on the left side. In terms of, I mean, I look at safety and looking at the list now, like Justin Simmons is a guy who surprisingly is still out there, and I think could help you a ton in the free safety, at the free safety position. That's still a little bit of a, you know, a mystery. And I'm with Chris on Steph Gilmore. Like, he is basically what obviously you strive for Christian Gonzalez to be, but even in terms of like their personality, they're not the loud cornerback. They're the, you know, kill you with kindness, don't really say much, just kind of go out there and show you and just play ball. And I think that you're right, Chris. Like, he is someone who could literally show him the ropes and, you know, potentially turn into a guy like that. And I look at Jamal Adams, Patrick Peterson, like I'm probably all set on those guys. I think they're a little bit, you know, just past what they're worth right now. I think they're big names, but yeah, I'm more so looking at left tackle though than I am at cornerback, I think.
For me, a lot of these names really kind of break glass in case of emergency, or if the guys that you're kind of expecting more from don't pan out. Like, especially at the left tackle spot, you're either going to have to put up with injury or just the fact these guys are really old. Frankly, Chuks Okorafor, yeah, he's switching to left tackle, but he's also a young guy who has a lot of starting experience in his own right. And with Scott Peters, I think it's worth saying, okay, is this a guy where we're in training camp and there are some serious problems where he is just not making the adjustment and we can't afford to go into the season with this? And obviously the same for Caden Wallace if you don't see enough from him. That's where I'm thinking, okay, would Bakhtiari want to sign a rebuilding team? Maybe a Donovan Smith, a guy who's kind of been a mercenary in terms of getting the Super Bowl rings. Like, he's been on the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. I don't know if he wants to come to a rebuilding team. Charles Leno is probably the closest guy who seems like an ideal fit in terms of being a seasoned left tackle. But again, he's on the older side. And I just feel like Chuks gives you more in terms of athleticism. Cornerback, I agree. I'm not going to be mad if Stephon Gilmore is back in New England sometime in the next couple months. But I do think with so many young, promising guys at cornerback like Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, Marco Wilson's made some plays. Obviously, Marcus Jones, and we'll kind of talk about corner more. But I'd like to see those guys battle it out. And if you decide towards, you know, once it gets deep into the summer, these guys aren't really giving us enough, you know, these are only going to be number threes. They don't need to be number ones. But if you really are still nervous, I'm all for Gilmore. With the safeties, I love Justin Simmons, but at the same time, I think Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar are going to play every snap for you, really ideally. And you don't really want to take snaps from Marte Mapu either. Obviously, he struggled last season, but this is a guy with a ton of athleticism who I'd like to see with another year under his belt. If the game slows down for him and he can really play to that athleticism and that ball hawking nature that we saw at Sacramento State. So I just don't see how Justin Simmons fits. Like, that's a starting caliber guy. He's not going to be your third safety. You know what I'm saying? So I just don't know that he'd want to come here. I like Jaron Curse, honestly, as a guy where in that Cowboy scheme, they also love to use 3, sometimes even 4 safeties. And he's kind of been in that type of system where he can be the third guy where he's in and out, doesn't have to be a starter. I'd be interested in him if maybe Mapu's not showing what they want to see. And then edge, I mean, I really want to see what Keon White's got. I don't think that's a pressing need, but I do like Yannick Ngakoue and Emmanuel Ogbah as role players in their scheme, kind of guys that'll just rotate in. But yeah, no one here where I'm like, oh, you got to bring this guy in. I think it's more, again, like I say, kind of break glass in case of emergency more than anything. All right, we got a lot more for you guys, but first, quick word from our friends at Game Time. Be right back.
The NBA Finals are finally here, and if I have any chance at all to find tickets to a game, it's probably going to be through Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Getting through the Game Time app is super easy, and I really like their user interface. All you have to do is go to the game or event that you want to attend, go through the venue to see where you want to sit relative to the action. Then you can actually get a panoramic view of your seat so you'll know exactly what to expect once you get your ticket. Game Time is also great for those weekends where you're not really sure what you want to do with your night because you can just scroll through, look at flash deals, zone deals, or last-minute tickets and find a plan to spend the rest of your day or evening. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
For the next question, kind words as always from Old Man Mob. F Cancer. Hopefully she gets through this and everything gets better for her. Appreciate you as always, buddy. All right, let's get to the next question here. What do we got? Okay. What should the Patriots do if/when Drake Maye is ready to play, but they don't have an NFL caliber left tackle or guard? And I guess we can kind of lump this in with the fact that do we think that they do have NFL caliber left tackle or guards? Obviously, things have to pan out and there's a lot of question marks, but do we like the depth as it stands?
No, go ahead, Chris. Go first.
I'm like you go.
Well, the reason I jumped it was because I kind of also just said what I thought about the idea of Okorafor on the left, and that I'm not entirely sold on it. And maybe they'll prove me wrong, and maybe I'll end up eating crow. But like right now, I just look at on one who I'm fine with, and I know we're looking more at the left side, but like I wonder about the transition that he's going to make, and then if it doesn't work out, then you might have to rely on a guy like Hayden Wallace, or I guess you could theoretically then move a Calvin Anderson or someone out to the left side. But long story short is it's no one that I love to be their left tackle. So if they're struggling at that position, I don't think you throw Maye into the fire, because this whole rebuild is contingent upon Drake Maye being the guy, and it's contingent upon not having him go out there and turn into what Mac Jones was towards the end of his career, which was a guy who was out there and sputtered, and it just didn't go well, and for a variety of reasons. You want the situation to be as perfect as possible around him, and that's quality personnel who knows what they're doing. That also includes keeping him upright and not letting him get sacked. And so I don't see it, and I don't see them doing that to him, but because I think they understand the magnitude of this decision. So if the line is not doing well around Brissett, but Maye looks ready, I still think they should hesitate a bit on throwing him into the fire.
And it's not even like there's a tight end on the roster that you feel really good about. Oh, they're just going to max protect a ton, right? If it's, Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are the two that are on the 53, I still don't think you feel great about having like a tight end that can essentially erase that. But I do think tackle's a huge issue, and I think they've been a little too nonchalant with like how easy they think it's going to be just to flip from the right side to the left side. Where that's one thing I really appreciated. The first time we talked to Chooks about this, he was like, it's going to take time. This is something that's going to take time. I'm an NFL player. I believe I can do it, but it's going to take time. And I thought it was so refreshing when he said that, because it was the first time I'd heard it since, everyone's, oh, well, him and Wallace are both really athletic. They can flip. It's like when you've been doing everything right-handed for 5 years straight and you're suddenly asked to do it lefty, that's not an easy thing to do. So it's going to take some time. I don't love their plan at all at left tackle either. It feels like they're just throwing a bunch of darts at the board and hoping that one hits a bullseye. And I don't think that that's a recipe for success with a rookie quarterback.
So I know
Taylor loves it. Taylor loves Chooks.
I definitely don't love it. I would like if there was a left tackle other than Vidarian Lowe, who had extensive experience at the spot, 100%. At the same time, if we look at the Browns offense last year, and obviously there weren't anything to write home about necessarily, but this is a team that started Jerron Christian at left tackle starting in week 10 throughout the rest of the season. And then most of the end of the season had James Hudson at right tackle. And they still managed to make it to the playoffs. They were 6-4, I believe, if you include their playoff loss. Obviously, a great defense had a lot to do with that, but the Patriots have a pretty good defense on their own. And I really do think this is a scheme where you mentioned the mass protect. I just think Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper just need dedicated chips. Like, I don't think they're going to be necessarily blocking on an island. I really think it's just going to be make sure that these tackles can at least get to their spots and be able to function where they're not truly on an island. And this is going to be a run-heavy team, a team that uses a lot of play action, a lot of screens, a lot of quick game. I don't think if you put Drake Maye in there, they're going to put him in a lot of positions where it is just like, hey, Chooks on an island, take this all-pro edge rusher, and Drake, sayonara, sucker, like figure it out. I just can't see that really being the modus operandi. Why did I say that? I don't think I've ever said that in my life. I don't even know if I said it right. But I do have faith in Alex Van Pelt to protect the quarterback, because we saw the Browns do it throughout last season. And I still do have faith in Chooks. Like, this isn't last season where they literally did not have someone other than Trent Brown at left tackle who had started NFL games on a consistent basis. It was really all backups. And Chooks is still someone who has experience. We'll see how it plays out. And if we're looking, into the preseason and neither Caden Wallace nor Chooks is looking even decent out there, then for sure, that's when you ring the bell and say, all right, Charles Leno, what are you up to? Like, we need to figure something out. And at guard, I'm not totally sold on Nick Leverett necessarily, but again, this is somebody who has experience on a playoff team in the Buccaneers, was able to protect Tom Brady, who helped a ton on his own with the quick release and all that. But at least he has snaps under his belt. And I do like Layden Robinson, to be honest. Like, if City So gets back and he secures that left guard spot, even Jim Nagy and a lot of people who were studying Layden Robinson and, saw him up close were saying that he is somebody who can start pretty quickly in the NFL. So again, we will see. But even if it's not a perfect situation, I think you can put Drake Maye in there, because we've seen him be able to play above the people around him. And again, I think the scheme is going to do a good enough job to make sure that he's not putting tough spots. And then with his athleticism and just his instincts as a passer, I think he'll be able to mitigate some of the damage that you would see if he was put in a spot where he had to overcome some offensive line woes. Anything else before we move on?
So you're giving him the shot then. You're giving him the shot even if the line is crummy.
Not if it's crummy. Like, if it's a turnstile over there, I don't love that. But if Chooks is solid or he's fine, I think that's okay. I don't think you need it's huge to have a great left tackle. It's a reason it's a premium position. But I don't think you need like an all-pro there to start Drake Maye, if that makes sense.
All righty.
Yep. All right. Is it a make it or break it year or preseason for one player on offense or defense? One player on defense and offense who would be a shock cut or shock trade. So I'll bring up the roster right now. Hope everybody can see this. I promise I did my best with magnifying it. But first, we'll start with make or break year for a player on offense and or defense, whatever your heart's telling you. And we'll start with Chris.
Off the top of my head on offense, it's Tyquan Thornton, because if he doesn't show up this preseason, he's not going to be on the team. So he's absolutely on the chopping block if he doesn't show up. So he's the first one, like right off the top of my head. And I start looking at this. It's like, it's Tyquan Thornton. Like, he needs to produce or else he's just not going to be on the roster. He's not going to get the free pass that he has the last 2 years.
I will add somebody from the wide receiver room who I really think needs to have a good preseason, and it's Juju Smith-Schuster. And could he be his contract situation makes it interesting, because he still has 2 years left at a decent chunk of change. But like, at the same time, I don't think anybody from or who was signed during the Belichick regime really has any free passes right now with, this new front office. I think that if they don't see him fit, I think they'll eat the money and cut him if necessary. And there's a lot of guys in that room. They just added, a 12th today in David Wallace. And, not that he's going to be necessarily, bidding for a starting role, but the room's crowded right now. You brought in KJ Osborne, you re-signed Kendrick Bourne, you drafted 2 rookies. Like, it's not a shoo-in for the guy who you signed to a big money deal last year to just make this team. So he told us he's 100% healthy. If it works out, great, but I don't see him as a lock for the roster whatsoever.
I agree there. I'll go with a different position because I don't want to go with Kayshon Boutte, but you know what? We were already talking about receivers. I'll go with Joshua Uche. Now, I'm rooting for him. I would love to see him return to the form that we saw in 2022. But the reality is also that if he does have a bad season or isn't productive, then we're talking about one good season in 5 years. And that's where you start to say, okay, it's kind of hard to defend the guy. Like on my roster, I have him as a yellow, which pretty much means he's a backup. I don't want to put him there. If he plays well, then I think he's a quality role player, and you look at him more like a pass-rushing Anthony Jennings, where, he's one-dimensional, but he's a lead at one thing, and he's still a really valuable piece for you. And I know that the scheme didn't help him last season. He kind of hinted towards that, where he played a lot of contain. He couldn't pin his ears back. They had him on the field for early downs, and it just didn't really fit with his skill set. Whereas in 2022, you're seeing he's really getting after guys, being aggressive with tackles, and that's where he's really in his mode. So if he can really regain that form, I'm all for it. I think that's when you see him stick around long-term as a core piece and designated pass rusher. But if he doesn't, then I feel like it's going to be hard to justify not bringing him back on anything other than maybe like one more prove-it deal. Maybe he's not done in New England, but I think it kind of hurts his reputation because right now he's kind of gotten the benefit of the doubt. Any surprise cuts or trades for you guys? Honestly, I'm having trouble finding one that would really be surprising. There's not a ton of guys here where I'm like, oh, yeah, you can't get rid of them unless they really do seem like core pieces.
Right. And I think Mike kind of nailed this with the Juju thing earlier, where maybe around the league, that would be surprising if he was cut. But if you're following this team closely and you're watching them, and I don't think it would be surprised, to see him cut.
Right. I guess I can throw the Matthew Judon speculation into the mix. Again, I don't think they're going to move him, and I don't think, honestly, with there being some speculation around it, I don't know how surprising it would be. He's looking for a new contract. He's coming off an injury. He was, his participation and attendance has been spotty so far. Like, I think he wants to be here, and I think they want to keep him here, but nothing's happened yet. So they could potentially dangle him for trade if they, he's one of their older players. Granted, he's one of their better players, but they may dangle him and, try and get some draft capital if they can. So it wouldn't necessarily completely shock me, but he's also one of their quote unquote building blocks right now. So we'll see what happens there.
I might go with KJ Osborne, and I've kind of talked about this before. It's not that I want to see him cut or anything. I think he brings a lot to the wide receiver room, both as a leader and as just a reliable veteran, especially with Kendrick Bourne's health kind of up in the air. Like, we saw videos of him running, and I don't think anybody could look at that video and have a lot of confidence in this guy being, a core contributor as early as September. As much as you hope he gets back, it just doesn't seem realistic. But if these young guys emerge and they're saying, okay, KJ Osborne's probably going to be like a 5 for us. This is assuming that you see Jalen Pope, Javon Baker really emerge as guys that contribute for you. Demario Douglas is pretty much a lock. And maybe like a Tyquan Thornton is someone where he carries the momentum that we're starting to see from him into the preseason. And you're like, okay, the pads came on and Tyquan's on the field and he's not getting hurt. That's, I think, something where we could see KJ Osborne get pushed off the roster because he's on a 1-year deal. Like, yes, he had a lot of guaranteed money, but if there are younger guys that you think have a future on your roster, I'm sure you're going to eat the $3 million guaranteed. You got plenty of cap space. So I think he has every reason to make the roster. But if we're talking about a shot cutter trade, I think maybe if someone else emerges that we don't expect right now, because he does seem like right now he's the starting Z receiver. So, he's a starter. But yeah, I just feel like people would be surprised if it happened, but it would take those young guys really stepping up and showing us something that we haven't quite seen yet. All right, we still got much more to come, but first, quick words from our friends at Prize Picks. Be right back.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. The finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. When the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball was just getting started, with young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breonna Taylor and Asia Wilson. You could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the basketball board, and I'm taking Jaylen Brown's overs on points and rebounds because dude has been absolutely killing it. I'm also going to take Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made and Breonna Stewart for more than 25 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, next question. Ideally, as in best for the defense and best for Jonathan Jones, where does he take most of his snaps this season? Mike, I'll start with you.
Ideally, I think he is your slot cornerback and you have one of the younger guys step up at the outside. I think that he's better in the slot than he is outside. And I think that also means that, you have a younger guy, call it Alex Austin, call it Isaiah Bolden, who proved that he can handle himself and you don't need to, like we talked about earlier, break glass in case of emergency and sign a Stephon Gilmore. So ideally, I think that's how it shakes out. But realistically, I think he's going to end up playing outside for them. I think it's going to be him on the outside. I think it'll be Marcus Jones, who, takes some snaps, as their nickel corner, barring his health. So I think that's realistically how it shakes out. I like Alex Austin. I like Bolden. I like Marco Wilson, but I feel like it's a little, I don't know how I want to word it, but I think that, I don't necessarily see them taking a big enough step going into this year for them to be a bona fide starter on the outside opposite Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, I think ideally it's Alex Austin takes another step and grabs that CB2 spot where he's someone that has actually impressed me early on in OTAs, where obviously he finished the year strong. And at OTAs, we're not seeing a ton of Gonzalez. We're not seeing a ton of John Jones or Marcus Jones, which on one hand, it's alarming that the wide receivers aren't doing a little more. But on the other hand, it's giving you a good look at the young rookie defensive backs. And I thought Alex Austin has showed up. He tipped the ball, led to an interception at the second OTA. He's just been around the ball a lot. And I think if he keeps ascending, then, yeah, you can bump John Jones into the slot where when he's there, it feels like he's the best slot corner in the league. And when he's on the outside, he's a good boundary corner. But I think the slot is his natural spot. So best case is Alex Austin really shows up this summer and forces him inside.
Yeah, I agree. I think John Jones' best spot's inside because that's a spot where we saw with Miles Bryant, for all the crap that he got, he wore a lot of caps for that defense. Where I asked Kyle Duggar, sometimes they have this package where Duggar will be the slot in cover 2 looks when they're in their nickel package, and then Miles Bryant would back up. And I'm like, is it a certain look or what is it that kind of prompts you guys to do that? He's like, yeah, it's just a feel thing. Sometimes it's just yeah, I want to do this. And that's something that takes chemistry. It takes reps. Marcus Jones doesn't have those. And even when we saw last summer, he wasn't really getting a ton of reps in the slot. He was there sometimes, but he was outside a ton. So I just don't know if I feel comfortable with him being their full-time slot guy, whereas Jonathan Jones knows this defense like the back of his hand. So that feels like a more natural spot for him. And also with Marcus Jones's health, I just don't think he's someone you can rely on. I kind of see him as more of a bonus where if he's healthy, awesome. If he's not, it's kind of to be expected. With Alex Austin, he's a guy who's had a clean bill of health, like you guys said, had a really strong end of the season. I was impressed with how few mistakes he made, especially on top of just the big plays. And then you get Marco Wilson, who's been competitive anytime we've seen him with the Patriots, and Isaiah Bolden, who has a ton of talent, but pretty much had a redshirt season last year. And you want to see him continue to develop. He had a play as well in the last OTA that we saw. So, yeah, I'd rather see one of those outside guys emerge. Maybe have John Jones as your big nickel outside corner where when you want Peppers or Duggar down in that slot role, then Jonathan Jones plays outside. But when you get into more of your true nickel or dime looks, then John Jones can be where he's at his best in the slot, especially as he gets older and he's kind of losing some of his speed. He can still hang outside, but I felt like, especially against the Raiders, you kind of saw he's not that crazy speedster he was back in the day where it's no one's getting behind John Jones. So, yeah. I totally agree with you guys on that one. All right, let's wrap this one up. Unless we got any questions in the chat. If you do, feel free to throw them in there. We'll try to get to them before we close out. Wait, that's the same question. I am so silly. Okay, which second-year defensive player do you see is most likely to have a breakout season other than Gonzo? Chris, I'll go with you, Mike. I see you got your thinking cap.
Keon White. This feels like a absolute layup. There's the alley, there's the oop. I think it definitely is Keon White. And, Gerard's already singled him out as somebody who surprised him with leadership. I mean, at this point in the calendar, I think any defensive lineman showing up for these, like all of them, that's like a form of leadership, just being there, because I think there's not a ton to be gained from early OTAs if you're a veteran defensive lineman. But I think he came on strong down the stretch last year. He's another guy that was playing really well at the end of the year. I mean, looks great. Looks like he spent the offseason in the weight room. I think he's going to, be a little more – he was still a little raw last year. I think that, there's a little more refining there now. And I think he's primed for a breakout. So thank you for this layup.
I was going to say, yeah, thanks. For some reason, my thinking Cabo's on. I still have Cabos in my head, and I don't know why Keon White didn't come to mind, especially like you said.
Monday.
What Gerard told us last week. So I'll add Marte Mapu into the mix. It's another, I guess, obvious one because they were the three top defensive players they took last year in Gonzo and Keon and him. But with them, and again, I keep saying they're looking for someone to fill that Devin McCourty true free safety role when realistically Peppers was fine last year. I think he's going to play that majority of the time for them, but I still think that, you want to give the young guy some looks, and I think he's going to have more opportunities to do that. And he's also going to have more opportunities to play, linebacker. He's a dual position player for a reason. They drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason. He's athletic. He can make plays, and he's going to get more run this year than last year naturally as a second-year player. So I liked what I saw from him early last year. Struggled a bit towards the back end of the season, but we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what they can do with him in the defense.
Yeah, I'll just go with someone different because we kind of hit a lot of the second-year guys. I'll go with Alex Austin, just bring him back up again because we talk about opportunities. If he sees the job, he's the only one of these guys who's never going to leave the field. And we saw it even towards the end of last season. He wasn't a rotational corner where sometimes you saw with Sean Wade even. Like, they didn't really want him on the field all the time. They'd kind of switch guys in and out. Alex Austin was, I think it was only Miles Bryant was the only defensive back towards the late stretch that had more snaps than Alex Austin did. And that shows you they really valued this guy and saw something in him. And especially, like, I can't get that Josh Allen play out of my head. The fact that, one, obviously Mike Pellegrino, one of the most underrated position coaches, I think, in the league, put him in position to know that it was coming, but also for him to diagnose it, know that it was coming live, and actually make the play. I thought was really impressive. He also brings a fire to the cornerbacks that they don't really have. I feel like Marco Wilson and him are two guys who are going to get fired up and really let guys hear when they make a play. Like we saw when he had the batted pick, like Alex is kind of getting people's face, not getting people's faces, but like he's boisterous. There was one play, I remember he was kind of overzealous and looked like he might have tackled somebody to the ground, but you don't want to do that. But still, you can see the passion he plays with. I feel like it'd be a great fit in that secondary. And again, with the talent and the opportunity, I feel like that could combine and we could potentially see him have a really impressive season. But I mean, still, it's going to be hard to outproduce someone like Keon White and Marte Mapu, who have all the God-given talent. And although they will be more rotational players by nature of their positions, I also think they're probably just going to be put in position to make more plays, especially Keon White. So a lot of good options for the Patriots to maybe have a breakout season from one of those guys. All right, last question from our good buddy Los. Which wide receivers do you predict to lead the team in targets, receptions, and touchdowns? And I assume we can have some flexibility if we want to kind of split these up between different players. Mike, no thinking cap for you this time. You're going first, bud.
Pop Douglas targets, Pop Douglas receptions, Hunter Henry touchdowns. I think Hunter Henry still is the red zone guy for them, and I think he's going to lead them in touchdowns.
I like it.
It's really tough just because, like, when is Kendrick Bourne going to be back? You know, if he's ready to go early in the season, then I like him for that touchdown stat. But otherwise, I don't know. But I do agree that I think Pop is going to lead him in targets if he stays healthy again. I think inherently he'll lead him in receptions, touchdowns. Go Javon Baker. How about that, huh?
Let's go.
Like
Get your popcorn ready.
You do that one just for me? All right, so targets, I agree. It's Pop. He's established just by nature of that slot position. Although Jalen Polk could kind of compete for that just because Pop is more of a role player because you don't really want him on the field in those base packages where it's just two receivers. Like we've already seen it. Anytime there's two receivers, there's no Pop to be found. As soon as there's three, obviously, he's your guy. So I'll actually switch it up and I'll say Polk. Just kind of something for fun for targets and receptions. I'll go receiving yards instead of receptions. I think that could be Javon Baker. Just because I feel like he's going to be one of your chunk play guys, Polk in the same category. But I think one-on-one matchups, I love Baker as that guy who can exploit it better than anybody else. And we saw with Drake May and Tez Walker, he loves him some one-on-one matchups. He will attack them when he can. So I feel like as long as Baker can continue to show the kind of stuff that we saw in OTAs where he has two crazy catches from Jacoby Brissett, I do think he has a good chance of being the receiving yards leader. And touchdowns, yeah, I'm going to have to steal yours, Mike. Like Hunter Henry, again, a reliable guy where you know where you're going to get from him. And he's been such a red zone monster, even last season. Through everything was terrible, but as soon as they got in the scoring territory, whose name are you usually hearing? It's Hunter Henry. That was a really good one. And
the question's which wide receivers? You guys are picking a tight end.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. Touchdowns. I'm gonna go with Poke. I'll go with Poke.
I'll take KJ Osborne. I know Taylor already has him off the roster, but I'll take KJ Osborne to lead them in touchdowns.
Good. Okay, I'll do one more. We got a good question in the chat. I did want to ask, will Maye's reps be amped out as we get closer to training camp in the preseason, or is he still behind Jacoby Brissett? This is a good question. Mike, we kind of talked about it in our OTA preview and how these reps might get divvied up as we get towards the end of OTAs and when the change will happen. Chris, what do you think? Do you think that maybe in this practice we'll see something different, or do you think we're going to have to wait a little while for more of a training camp?
I think we'll have to wait till training camp to really see. And even then, I think it's all going to be Drake dependent. You know, I think it's going to depend on how much he pushes and how good he looks to like how many of those reps he essentially starts stealing. Because I don't think they have it charted out right now, you know, that like on August 14th, Jacoby's going to take this many reps and Drake's going to. I think it's going to be dependent on like how far along he is, how quickly he's learning, and, you know, how fast he can steal some of those reps and make them his and just force his way in there.
Yeah, I'll push people to the channel, Taylor, to give our, to give us a quick view on the OTA preview that'll be posted later. But no, I'm with you on that. Where I don't think they have it charted out. I think it's dependent on where Drake is, and I think that'll go through not only the remainder of the preseason, but also into the year when they ultimately decide to turn this thing over to him. So.
Yeah, I've been kind of in the same bandwagon. I think OTAs is just going to be veterans first. I think because there aren't a ton of real live bullets flying, they really just want to make sure things are done smoothly. And I think that's why we really see the veterans. And even Gerard Mayo told us that they kind of want to whittle it down to 3 quarterbacks. I think that tells you a lot of what you need to know, where training camp is when the real competition begins. Completely agree. If Drake Maye earns more reps, Drake Maye will get more reps, especially when it comes to players. Like Gerard Mayo knows better than anybody. If one player is significantly better, like last season with Malik Cunningham, when guys in the locker room were saying, why is he not playing? Why are we putting Mac Jones in when he's not giving us anything? At some point, I feel like the players are going to make it known if they think Drake Maye is the better quarterback. Like, hey, maybe we should put the young guy in because he's clearly making all these crazy plays and he's got to learn at some point. But yeah, that probably won't happen until we actually get to training camp. That was a lot of fun, guys. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, brother. Appreciate you so much. Once more, I'm just going to put it up on the screen. You can't click on this link, obviously, but if you look at the promo for this show, you can find the link there. Feel free to donate. It is much encouraged. And before we get you out of here, Chris, please remind the people where they can find you and what great stuff you got coming down the pipeline that we should be looking out for.
You can follow me at @Chris Mason, MassLive.com/Patriots for all of our coverage there. It's going to be full of stuff, especially next week. Minicamp starts ramping up. So, yeah, follow along there.
Awesome. And I know you did a really great piece on Drake Maye where you actually went down to Carolina and got some in-depth info. So make sure to check that out. Thank you so much for joining us, buddy. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.